As tears streamed down Emma's face, her trembling fingers discovered the wooden splinter embedded deep in Rusty's bandage, the hidden torment that had escaped notice of every veterinarian, every adult, while the clock ticked mercilessly toward tomorrow morning's scheduled euthanasia. With the dawn just hours away, the 7-year-old clutched the bloodied evidence in her small palm, suddenly understanding why her beloved horse had stopped fighting to live. The morning sunlight filtered through the wooden slats of the old barn, casting golden strips across the hay-strewn floor. 7-year-old Emma Thompson sat cross-legged outside the stall, her small fingers gripping the weathered boards as she peered through the gap at the magnificent chestnut gelding lying motionless on his side. Rusty's once bright eyes now appeared dull and distant, his powerful body unnaturally still except for the shallow rise and fall of his ribcage. "Please get better, Rusty," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible over the gentle rustling of hay beneath the horse's massive form. "Please don't leave me." Behind her, the heavy footsteps of her grandfather approached, accompanied by the lighter tread of Dr. Sarah Miller, the local veterinarian who had been treating Rusty since his accident 3 weeks ago. "Emma, sweetheart," her grandfather, John Thompson, called softly. His weathered face, lined with decades of working the family farm, showed the strain of the past weeks. "Come away now. Dr. Miller needs to check on Rusty." Emma reluctantly stood, her yellow sweater, Rusty's favorite color, she always insisted, catching the morning light. She brushed straw from her overalls, but remained rooted to the spot, unwilling to move further away from her beloved friend. Dr. Miller knelt beside Emma, her kind eyes meeting the child's worried gaze. "How's our patient doing this morning? Has he eaten anything?" Emma shook her head solemnly. "He won't touch his food. I tried giving him an apple, the way he likes it, cut into quarters, but he just turned away." Her voice trembled slightly. "But he's getting worse, isn't he?" The veterinarian exchanged a glance with John before turning back to Emma. "Let me take a look at him, okay? Why don't you and your grandpa wait outside for a few minutes?" "No!" Emma's response was immediate and fierce. "I want to stay with him. He knows when I'm here. He gets scared when I leave." John placed a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "Dr. Miller needs space to work, Pumpkin. We'll be right outside the barn door, I promise." As her grandfather guided her toward the entrance, Emma looked back at Rusty, tears welling in her eyes. The magnificent horse that had once galloped through the meadows with her on his back now lay defeated on the stall floor, his spirit seemingly broken by the accident that had shattered his leg. Outside, the June morning was picture perfect. The rolling hills of Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, stretched toward the horizon, dotted with grazing cattle and the neighboring farms that had stood for generations. But Emma couldn't appreciate the beauty today. Her mind was filled only with thoughts of Rusty. "Grandpa," she asked, her small voice serious, "is Dr. Miller going to make Rusty go to sleep forever?" John Thompson sighed deeply, crouching down to his granddaughter's level. His knees creaked in protest. 67 years of hard farm work had taken their toll, but he ignored the discomfort. Some conversations needed to happen eye to eye. "Emma, honey, sometimes the kindest thing we can do for an animal that's suffering is to let them go. Rusty's leg isn't healing right, and he's in a lot of pain." "But he can get better," Emma insisted, her blue eyes flashing with determination. "He's just sad and scared." "I know he can get better if we don't give up on him." John's heart ached for his granddaughter. Emma had been coming to the farm every weekend since she was a toddler, ever since his daughter Lisa and her husband Mark had moved to Pittsburgh for work. The bond between the girl and the chestnut gelding had been instantaneous and profound. When Emma was 5, she'd declared that Rusty was her soul animal, a term she'd picked up from one of her storybooks. We've done everything we can, Pumpkin," John said gently. "Sometimes, even when we do everything right, things don't work out the way we hope." The barn door opened, and Dr. Miller emerged, her expression grave. She gestured for John to join her out of Emma's earshot, but the girl darted forward, gripping the veterinarian's sleeve. "Please don't hurt Rusty," Emma pleaded. "Please give him more time." Dr. Miller knelt down again, her professional demeanor softening. "Emma, Rusty's condition is deteriorating. The fracture isn't healing properly, and now he's refusing to eat. He's lost nearly 100 pounds, and horses can't survive long without proper nutrition. He's suffering." "But I think it's time we discuss what's best for Rusty," Dr. Miller continued, looking up at John. "I don't believe he's going to recover from this injury. The humane option would be euthanasia." "No!" Emma's scream echoed across the farmyard, startling a flock of starlings from the nearby oak tree. "You can't kill him. He just needs more time. He needs me." John reached for his granddaughter, but Emma dodged his grasp and raced back into the barn, her sobs trailing behind her like a wake. "I'm sorry," John said to Dr. Miller. "This is hitting her hard." "Rusty's been her special friend since she was tiny." The veterinarian nodded sympathetically. "I understand. It's never easy, especially for children, but prolonging his suffering wouldn't be fair to Rusty." "When would you want to do it?" John asked, the words sticking in his throat. "Tomorrow morning would be best," Dr. Miller replied quietly. "Give everyone a chance to say goodbye." "I can come first thing, around 7. John nodded, his gaze drifting toward the barn, where his granddaughter had disappeared. "I'll try to prepare her, though I'm not sure anything can really prepare a child for losing their first animal friend." Inside the barn, Emma collapsed beside Rusty's stall, her small body racked with sobs. "I won't let," she whispered fiercely through her tears. "I promise." Dinner at the farmhouse that evening was a silent affair. Emma pushed her meatloaf around her plate, building little walls of mashed potatoes that she never breached with her fork. John tried several times to engage her in conversation, but her responses were monosyllabic at best. "Your mum called," John finally said, hoping to spark some interest. "She and your dad will be here early tomorrow morning." Emma looked up, her eyes narrowing with sudden suspicion. "Why? They never come on Thursdays? Is it because of Rusty?" John sighed, setting down his fork. "Yes, sweetheart. I thought you might need them here for tomorrow." "There's not going to be a tomorrow for Rusty, is there?" Emma's voice was flat, her young face suddenly appearing much older than her 7 years. That's what you're all planning." "Emma, we've talked about this," Dr. Miller explained. "Dr. Miller is wrong." Emma pushed away from the table, her chair scraping loudly against the wooden floor. "Rusty isn't ready to go. I can feel it, Grandpa. He's trying to tell me something, but nobody's listening." John rubbed his weathered face, exhaustion etched in every line. "Sometimes, Pumpkin, we have to make hard choices because we love our animals. It's not fair to let Rusty suffer. He's suffering because nobody understands what he needs." Emma's chin quivered, but her gaze remained steady. "I'm going out to the barn. I'm staying with him tonight." "Emma, it's getting dark. You can't—" "Please, Grandpa," she interrupted, her voice small but determined. "Just tonight. I need to say goodbye my way." John Thompson had raised 3 children of his own and had helped with his granddaughter since she was born. He recognized the look of absolute determination on Emma's face, the same expression his late wife used to wear when her mind was made up beyond all changing. "All right," he conceded reluctantly, "but I'm bringing out your sleeping bag and some blankets and the walkie-talkies. If you need anything at all, you call me immediately. Understand?" Emma nodded solemnly, already heading for the door. "And Emma," John called after her, "I'm coming to check on you every 2 hours." No arguments. The barn was quiet except for the occasional shuffling of hooves and soft nickering from the other 3 horses that called it home. The overhead lights had been dimmed for the night, leaving pools of gentle yellow illumination every few yards down the center aisle. Emma settled herself on a fresh pile of hay outside Rusty's stall, wrapped in her purple sleeping bag, despite the mild June evening. Her grandfather had brought out her pillow, a thermos of hot chocolate, and a battery-powered lantern that cast a warm glow over her small encampment. "I'm staying all night, Rusty," she informed the horse, who remained lying on his side, his breathing labored. "I'm not going to leave you alone." From her backpack, Emma pulled out a worn copy of Black Beauty, the book her mother had been reading to her at bedtime during her visits. "I thought maybe you'd like to hear a story about another brave horse," she explained, opening to where they had left off. For nearly an hour, Emma read aloud in her halting but earnest voice, occasionally pausing to explain things to Rusty or show him the few illustrations scattered throughout the pages. As the night deepened around them, her voice grew tired, and she finally set the book aside. "Rusty," she whispered, moving closer to the stall door, "I don't want you to be scared about tomorrow. Grandpa says heaven for horses has endless green pastures and crystal clear streams and no fences anywhere." Her voice caught. "But I don't want you to go there yet. I want you to stay here with me." The horse's ears twitched slightly at the sound of her voice, the first response she'd seen from him all day. "See, you can hear me, can't you?" Emma slipped between the slats of the stall, ignoring her grandfather's strict instructions to stay outside. "You're still in there, Rusty. I know you are." Kneeling beside the massive animal, Emma gently stroked his neck, her small hand moving in the rhythmic pattern he'd always loved. "What's wrong, boy? Why won't you eat? Why won't you try to get better?" As if in answer, Rusty shifted slightly, his injured hind leg moving a fraction of an inch. The movement caused him to wince, a small sound of pain escaping. Emma frowned, leaning closer to examine the bandaged leg in the dim light. Dr. Miller had wrapped it again that morning, the white gauze stark against Rusty's chestnut coat. Something about the way the bandage sat didn't look right to Emma. "Does it hurt worse than before?" she asked, her fingers hovering over the wrapping. She'd watched Dr. Miller change the bandages enough times to recognize that this one seemed tighter than usual, with an odd bulge near the fetlock joint. The walkie-talkie crackled beside her sleeping bag. "Emma, it's Grandpa. Just checking in. Everything okay out there?" Emma scrambled back through the stall slats and grabbed the device. "Yes, Grandpa. Rusty and I are reading Black Beauty." "Good girl. Try to get some sleep, okay? I'll check on you again in a couple of hours." "Okay. Good night, Grandpa." "Good night, Pumpkin." After the walkie-talkie fell silent, Emma returned to Rusty's side, her eyes drawn again to the bandaged leg. Something wasn't right, and Emma was determined to figure out what— "I'm going to help you, Rusty," she promised, settling in for her night-long vigil. "Somehow I'm going to find a way." Outside, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of summer clover through the barn's open windows. Within the stall, a little girl and her horse faced the night together, neither one willing to give up just yet. The old barn creaked and settled as the night deepened. Emma struggled to keep her eyes open, determined to stay awake with Rusty during what might be his final hours. The battery-powered lantern cast long shadows across the stall, making Rusty's still form appear almost ghostly in the dim light. "I wish you could tell me what's wrong," Emma whispered, her head resting against the stall door. She'd moved back outside after her grandfather's second check-in, not wanting to worry him by being too close to the injured horse. Rusty's breathing had grown more labored over the past hour, each exhale coming with a faint grunt that Emma had never heard before. She frowned, crawling closer despite her promise to stay behind the stall door. "Are you hurting worse, boy?" she asked, slipping once again between the wooden slats. The horse's dark eye rolled toward her, a flicker of recognition amid his obvious distress. Emma placed her small hand on his neck, feeling the once powerful muscles now wasted from weeks of immobility. His coat, usually gleaming with health, had grown dull and matted in places where he couldn't reach to groom himself. "You're giving up?" Emma realized with a pang of sadness. Everyone says you're suffering too much, and now you believe them too." Rusty snorted softly, his breath warm against Emma's arm. On impulse, she leaned forward and pressed her face against his neck, inhaling the familiar horse scent that had been part of her life for as long as she could remember. "I'm not giving up on you," she whispered fiercely. "Not ever." As she pulled back, her yellow sweater caught briefly on something. Emma tugged it free and then paused, her brow furrowing. Carefully, she ran her fingers along the edge of Rusty's bandage where her sweater had snagged. "What's that?" she murmured, leaning closer. In the lantern light, Emma could just make out something protruding from beneath the white gauze, a thin, sharp edge that didn't belong. She touched it gingerly and realized it was a wooden splinter, nearly 3 inches long, embedded deep in the bandage layers. It was positioned exactly where the bulge had caught her attention earlier. "Oh, Rusty," she gasped. "Is this what's been hurting you?" The more she examined it, the more certain Emma became. The splinter was positioned in such a way that every time Rusty shifted his weight or moved his leg even slightly, the sharp edge would press deeper into his injured limb. No wonder he had stopped trying to stand or move. "It must have gotten caught in your bandage when you fell against the fence," Emma reasoned, recalling how Rusty's accident had happened when he'd spooked and crashed through the old wooden paddock fence. "Doctor." "Miller didn't see it when she wrapped your leg." Emma chewed her lip, considering her options. She knew she should call her grandfather on the walkie-talkie, but a glance at her Hello Kitty watch showed it was nearly 2 a.m. He'd be making his next check soon anyway. Besides, she wasn't supposed to be inside the stall in the first place. "I'm going to try to get it out," she decided, speaking to Rusty as if he could understand every word. "Oh, it might hurt a little, but then you'll feel better. Just stay really still, okay?" With delicate fingers, Emma began working at the splinter, trying to ease it out without disturbing the bandage too much. Rusty flinched at her first touch, but then remained remarkably still, as if sensing her intent to help. "Almost got it," Emma murmured, her tongue poking out between her teeth in concentration. Just a little more." With a final gentle tug, the splinter came free. Emma held it up to the light, grimacing at the wicked point and the small, dark stains that could only be blood. "Look what was hurting you, Rusty," she exclaimed, showing him the offending splinter before tossing it safely away. "No wonder you've been so miserable." To Emma's amazement, Rusty's breathing seemed to ease almost immediately. His dark eye, which had been dull with pain for weeks, focused on her with what she could have sworn was gratitude. "Better?" she asked, gently stroking his nose. In response, Rusty did something he hadn't done in days. He nickered softly, the familiar greeting he'd always given her when she arrived at the farm each weekend. Tears sprang to Emma's eyes. "You are better. I knew something was wrong. I knew you weren't ready to give up." The sound of tires on gravel outside interrupted her celebration. Headlights swept across the barn walls as a car pulled into the farmyard. Emma's heart sank as she realized her parents must have arrived early for the dreaded appointment with Dr. Miller. "They're here to say goodbye to you," she told Rusty, her voice cracking. "But they're wrong. You're going to be okay now. I just need to make them understand." The barn door creaked open, spilling yellowish light from the yard into the dimness. "Emma," her mother's voice called softly. "Are you in here, sweetheart?" "Mom!" Emma scrambled out of the stall, clutching the bloodied splinter in her hand. "Mum, you have to come quick." "I found what's been hurting Rusty." Lisa Thompson stepped into the barn, her travel-weary face illuminated by the overhead lights that her father had switched on behind her. "Emma, honey, it's the middle of the night. What are you doing still awake?" "Look!" Emma thrust her hand forward, displaying the splinter. This was stuck in Rusty's bandage. It was poking him every time he moved. That's why he wouldn't try to stand or eat. He was in pain all the time. Mark Thompson appeared behind his wife, setting down their overnight bags. "Slow down, Emmy," he said gently. "What are you talking about?" Before Emma could explain further, John emerged from the farmhouse, crossing the yard with surprising speed for his age. "You're here early," he called to his daughter and son-in-law. "It wasn't expecting you until morning. We decided to drive through the night," Lisa explained, her eyes never leaving her daughter's earnest face. "We wanted to be here for everything." "But Rusty's going to be okay now," Emma insisted, tugging at her mother's hand. "Come see, he's already breathing better." The adults exchanged troubled glances over Emma's head. Lisa knelt down to her daughter's level, her tired eyes filled with compassion. "Sweetheart," she began gently, "I know how much you love Rusty, and I understand you want to believe he can get better. But sometimes—" "No, Mom," Emma interrupted, frustration bubbling up. "You're not listening. I really found something. Look." She thrust the splinter forward again, her small hand trembling. And this was stuck in his bandage, poking him every time he moved. "I took it out, and he already seems better. He even nickered at me." Mark placed a comforting hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Emmy, it's the middle of the night, and you're exhausted. Maybe you thought you heard—" "I did hear him." Emma stamped her foot, tears welling in her eyes. "Why won't anybody believe me?" "Just come look at him, please." John Thompson studied his granddaughter's face, noting the fierce determination in her eyes, a look he recognized all too well from his late wife. After 43 years of marriage to Margaret, he'd learned that sometimes the wisest course was to trust that expression. "Let's take a look," he said, stepping forward. "It can't hurt to check on him anyway." Lisa shot her father a warning glance. "Dad, don't encourage false hope. Dr. Miller was very clear about Rusty's condition." "5 minutes," John replied firmly. "We'll give Emma 5 minutes to show us what she found. We owe her that much." Emma didn't wait for further discussion. She darted back to Rusty's stall, the adults following reluctantly behind. The lantern still cast its warm glow over the injured horse, who, to everyone's surprise, had lifted his head slightly and was watching their approach. "See," Emma said triumphantly, "he couldn't even raise his head this morning. And look, his breathing is better too." Mark and Lisa moved closer, skepticism evident in their postures but willing to humor their daughter. John, however, noticed the change immediately. "Well, I'll be," he murmured, leaning against the stall door. "He does look more alert." Emma carefully pointed out where the splinter had been embedded in the bandage, showing the small tear in the gauze where she'd extracted it. It was poking into his leg right here. Every time he tried to move, it would hurt him even more. Lisa examined the splinter in Emma's hand, her expression softening slightly. "That's a nasty piece of wood. From the old fence he crashed through, I guess. Must have gotten caught in his wound before the first bandaging," John mused, "and then wrapped right in with each new dressing. Poor fella couldn't tell us what was wrong." Mark still looked unconvinced. Even if that splinter was causing him additional pain, it doesn't change the fact that his leg isn't healing properly. "Dr. Miller said the fracture is too severe and he's lost too much condition." "But that's just it, Dad," Emma insisted. "Maybe he wasn't healing because he couldn't move at all without terrible pain. And maybe he stopped eating for the same reason." As if to punctuate her point, Rusty shifted slightly, adjusting his position with less discomfort than they had seen in weeks. His nostrils flared as he caught Emma's scent. and he nickered again, soft but unmistakable. "That's twice he's nickered now," Emma said, her voice quivering with hope. "He hasn't made that sound in forever." Lisa and Mark exchanged uncertain glances, torn between not wanting to crush their daughter's hopes and the reality of the situation as explained by the veterinarian. "Edema," Lisa began carefully. "Even if the splinter was making things worse, Rusty's leg is still badly damaged. One splinter doesn't change Dr. Miller's diagnosis." "But what if it does?" Emma persisted. "What if Rusty couldn't heal because he was hurting too much from the splinter? What if he stopped eating because of the pain? Shouldn't we at least tell Dr. Miller before she... She couldn't finish the sentence. The reality of what morning would bring still too painful to articulate. John checked his watch. "It's nearly 3 in the morning. Dr. Miller won't be here for another 4 hours. That gives us time to see if Rusty shows any more improvement," Emma said quickly, seizing the opportunity. "Maybe he'll even eat something now." Mark sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Gemma, I don't want you getting your hopes up. The situation is still very serious." "I know that, Dad," Emma replied with a maturity that surprised them all. "But I also know Rusty, and the Rusty I know is a fighter. He just needed our help to figure out what was really hurting him." Something in her unwavering conviction gave the adults pause. John nodded slowly. "Tell you what," he said. "Why don't I fetch a little fresh hay and some water? If Rusty's feeling even slightly better, he might be interested. And some apple slices," Emma added eagerly. "He loves those." As John headed to the feed room, Lisa sat down on a nearby bale of hay, motioning for Emma to join her. "Come rest for a minute, sweetheart. You've been up all night." Emma hesitated, glancing back at Rusty. "I don't want to leave him." "You're not leaving him," Mark assured her. "We're all right here with him now." Reluctantly, Emma settled beside her mother, suddenly aware of how tired she truly was. Lisa wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders, pulling her close. "You really love him, don't you?" she said softly. Emma nodded against her mother's side. "He's my best friend, Mom. He listens to me. He doesn't think my ideas are silly like the kids at school sometimes do. When I'm with Rusty, I feel special." Lisa's eyes met Mark's over their daughter's head, a silent communication passing between them. Whatever happened with Rusty, they realized how profound this experience was for their child. Perhaps her first real confrontation with mortality and loss. John returned with a small flake of fresh hay, a bucket of clean water, and a paper towel holding several apple slices. "Here we go," he said, his voice deliberately upbeat. "Let's see if our patient has an appetite." Emma scrambled up, fatigue forgotten. "Let me give him the apple slices. He likes taking them from my palm." The adults watched as Emma approached Rusty with the fruit pieces arranged carefully on her outstretched hand. "It's okay, boy," she encouraged. "It's just me. I've got your favorite treat." For a long moment, Rusty simply gazed at her, his dark eyes reflecting the lantern light. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he stretched his neck forward and delicately lifted an apple slice from Emma's palm. The sound of Rusty's teeth crunching the apple piece seemed extraordinarily loud in the hushed barn. "He's eating," Lisa whispered, her voice tinged with disbelief. "He's eating," Emma echoed, her face transforming with joy. Mark stepped closer to the stall, his skepticism finally wavering. "Now I'll be damned," he murmured, too low for Emma to hear. John Thompson's weathered face broke into a cautious smile. "Well, I think Dr. Miller might need to reassess her patient in the morning." Outside, the night sky had begun its slow transition toward dawn, stars fading as the eastern horizon lightened imperceptibly. Inside the barn, Something else was dawning, a fragile, tentative hope that perhaps, just perhaps, Emma's discovery had changed everything. As the first pale fingers of dawn crept through the barn windows, the Thompson family maintained their vigil around Rusty's stall. The injured horse had continued to show small but significant improvements throughout the early morning hours. After accepting the apple slices from Emma's hand, he had nibbled at the fresh hay John provided and taken several long drinks from the water bucket, actions that would have seemed impossible just hours earlier. "I still can't believe it," Lisa whispered to Mark as they watched Emma dozing against the stall door, her small body finally surrendering to exhaustion. "Ah, that splinter must have been causing him tremendous pain." Mark nodded, his initial skepticism now tempered by what he had witnessed. "It's remarkable, but we need to be realistic. His leg is still badly fractured. One night of eating doesn't mean he's going to recover." "I know," Lisa sighed, leaning against her husband's shoulder, "but you have to admit, it changes things. If he's willing to eat now, maybe he has a fighting chance." John approached, carrying a thermos of coffee he'd retrieved from the farmhouse. "Thought we could all use some," he said, pouring the steaming liquid into plastic cups. "It's going to be a long morning." "What time did you say Dr. Miller is coming?" Mark asked, accepting a cup gratefully. 7, John replied, checking his watch. "It's about 2 hours from now." Lisa glanced at Emma, who slept with her yellow sweater bunched under her head as a makeshift pillow. "Should we wake her? She'd be more comfortable in the house." "Let her sleep," John advised. "She earned it. Besides, she'd never forgive us if we moved her away from Rusty now." Inside the stall, Rusty shifted again, more deliberately this time. The 3 adults watched in astonishment as the horse made a concerted effort to reposition himself, extending his injured leg with obvious care but less distress than before. "Look at that," John murmured. "He's actually trying to move that leg now." "Is that good or bad?" Lisa asked worriedly. "Won't he make the fracture worse if he moves too much?" "Dr. Miller said that some movement is actually beneficial for circulation," John explained. It was his complete refusal to move at all that concerned her. "This looks like progress." As if aware they were discussing him, Rusty turned his head toward them, his eyes noticeably brighter than they had been in weeks. His ears, which had been perpetually flattened in pain, now flickered forward with interest. "Well, I'll be," John said, a smile spreading across his weathered face. "That's the most alert I've seen him since the accident." The slight commotion caused Emma to stir. She blinked sleepily, momentarily disoriented, then bolted upright as she remembered where she was. "Rusty!" she exclaimed, turning immediately to check on her horse. "Is he okay? Did he eat more? Did he—" "Easy, pumpkin," John chuckled. "Your patient is doing just fine. In fact, he's been moving around a bit and seems much more alert." Emma scrambled to her feet, pressing her face between the wooden slats of the stall. "Good morning, Rusty," she called softly. "Are you feeling better?" In response, Rusty nickered again, that same greeting sound that had first given them hope hours earlier. Emma's face lit up with joy. "He is better, I told you." She turned triumphantly to her parents. "Doctor, Miller can't put him down now, right? Not when he's trying to get better." Lisa and Mark exchanged cautious glances. "Honey," Lisa began carefully, "Dr. Miller will need to make her own assessment. Rusty's leg is still very seriously injured." "But she has to see he's improved," Emma insisted. "She just has to." "And she will," Mark assured her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. We'll make sure she understands everything that's happened overnight." Emma's eyes filled with sudden tears. "But what if she still says he can't get better? What if she doesn't believe me about the splinter?" John pulled the offensive piece of wood from his pocket where he'd carefully stored it. "We have evidence, Emma. And more importantly, we have a horse who's showing signs of improvement. Doctor Miller is a good vet. She'll consider all the facts. As the sun rose higher, bathing the farmyard in golden morning light, the family worked together to make Rusty as comfortable as possible. John freshened the water and hay, while Mark cleaned the stall around the horse, careful not to disturb him. Lisa helped Emma wash her face and hands at the barn sink and brushed her tangled hair into something resembling order. "You look exhausted, sweetheart," Lisa observed, noting the dark circles under her daughter's eyes. "I'm okay," Emma insisted, though she couldn't quite suppress a yawn. "I want to be wide awake when Dr. Miller gets here." "Well, at least change out of that dirty sweater," Lisa suggested, pulling a clean t-shirt from the overnight bag she'd brought in from the car. "Ah, you've been wearing it since yesterday." "No!" Emma clutched the yellow garment protectively. "Rusty recognizes it. It's his favorite color. I want him to feel safe when Dr. Miller comes." Lisa recognized the battle wasn't worth fighting. "All right, keep the sweater, but splash some more cold water on your face to help you wake up." As Emma obeyed, the sound of tires on gravel announced an approaching vehicle. John glanced out the barn door and nodded grimly. "Dr. Miller's here," he announced. "Earlier than expected." Emma's heart began to race, fear and hope warring within her chest. This was the moment that would determine Rusty's fate. "Remember," she said urgently to her family, "we have to tell her everything right away, about the splinter and how he's eating now and moving better, and—" "We will, Emmy," Mark promised. "We'll make sure she has all the facts." Dr. Sarah Miller entered the barn, her expression solemn and professional. She carried her black medical bag and wore the same compassionate but detached expression she'd had the previous day, the face of someone prepared to perform a difficult but necessary task. "Good morning," she greeted them, clearly surprised to find the entire family assembled. "I see everyone's here early." Her eyes fell on Emma, noting the girl's exhausted but determined stance beside Rusty's stall. "Emma, I know this is hard, but—" "Dr. Miller," Emma interrupted, stepping forward. "Before you do anything, there's something really important you need to know about Rusty." Dr. Miller's professional composure flickered briefly as she registered Emma's interruption. She'd known this would be difficult. Euthanizing a child's beloved animal always was, but she hadn't expected such direct confrontation from the young girl. "Emma," she began again, her voice gentle but firm, "I understand how hard this is, but we discussed Rusty's condition yesterday. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for animals is to—" "But that was before," Emma persisted, stepping closer. "Before I found what was really hurting him, Dr." Miller glanced at the adults, a question in her eyes. John stepped forward, placing a supportive hand on Emma's shoulder. "Dr. Miller, there have been some developments overnight that you should know about," he explained. Emma discovered something important. "I found a splinter," Emma blurted out, unable to contain herself any longer. "A big one from the fence Rusty crashed through. It was stuck deep in his bandage, poking into his leg every time he moved. That's why he wouldn't eat or try to stand. He was hurting too much." John pulled the splinter from his pocket, offering it to the veterinarian. "She found this embedded in the bandage right around the fetlock joint." Dr. Miller took the wooden shard, examining it with professional interest. Her eyebrows rose slightly as she noted the size and sharpness of the fragment, as well as the dried blood along its edge. "When was this removed?" she asked, her clinical detachment giving way to genuine curiosity. "Around 2 in the morning, Lisa supplied. Emma was sitting up with Rusty and noticed it caught in his bandage. "And since she removed it," Mark added, his voice carrying the surprise he still felt, "Rusty has shown marked improvement. He's eating again, drinking water, and seems much more alert." Dr. Miller's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. She turned toward Rusty's stall, observing the horse with renewed attention. "He does look more alert," she admitted, noting his raised head and forward-pointing ears. "He ate apple slices from my hand," Emma said eagerly. "And hay too, and he's been trying to move his leg better. See, he's not giving up anymore." The veterinarian set her medical bag down and approached the stall door. "May I?" she asked, though the question seemed directed more at Rusty than the humans present. "Oh, he knows you're trying to help him," Emma assured her, though she couldn't quite keep the nervous edge from her voice. Dr. Miller entered the stall slowly, her movements calm and deliberate as she approached the injured horse. Rusty watched her cautiously, but didn't show the distress that had characterized his behavior during recent examinations. "Easy, boy," she murmured, running experienced hands along his neck and checking his vital signs. Let's take a look at you this morning." The Thompson family clustered around the stall door, watching intently as Dr. Miller conducted a thorough examination. She checked Rusty's eyes, gums, and respiration, then carefully assessed his injured leg, paying particular attention to the area where the splinter had been embedded. "The bandage is compromised where the splinter was removed," she noted. "And I'll need to change it regardless of what we decide today." Emma's breath caught at those words. "What we decide today?" It sounded like there might still be options beyond the grim certainty of yesterday's prognosis. "His pulse is stronger," Dr. Miller continued, speaking partly to herself as she worked. "Respiration more regular, less heat in the injured area than I'd expect." She straightened up, a contemplative expression on her face. "Well," John prompted when the silence stretched too long. Dr. Miller glanced at the splinter she'd set aside on the stall ledge. "It's certainly a significant find. This could indeed have been causing him considerable additional pain, enough to impact his appetite and willingness to move." "So he can get better now?" Emma asked, hope blooming in her voice. The veterinarian's expression remained measured. "And Emma, removing the splinter is definitely positive, but Rusty's fracture is still very serious. We need to be realistic about his chances for recovery." "But they're better than yesterday, right?" Emma pressed. "Now that the splinter is gone?" Dr. Miller nodded slowly. "Yes, I would say his chances have improved, though I can't promise anything. The fact that he's eating again is particularly encouraging." As if to underscore her point, Rusty stretched his neck toward Emma, who still had an apple slice in her pocket from earlier. Emma quickly offered it to him, and everyone watched as he took it with surprising gentleness. "See," Emma said triumphantly, "he wants to live." Something softened in Dr. Miller's professional demeanor as she watched the interaction between the girl and her horse. "I'd like to take some new X-rays," she decided. "The portable unit is in my truck. If you could help me bring it in," she added, looking at Mark and John, "we can get a better idea of how the fracture is doing." "Of course," Mark replied, relief evident in his voice at this reprieve, however temporary. As the men headed outside with Dr. Miller to retrieve the equipment, Lisa pulled Emma into a quick hug. "You did good, sweetheart," she whispered. "You really did." Emma leaned into her mother's embrace for just a moment before pulling away, her focus returning immediately to Rusty. "He just needed someone to really listen to him, Mom, to figure out what was wrong when he couldn't tell us himself." Lisa brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face, struck by the wisdom in those words. "You're right. Sometimes the most important thing we can do for anyone, people or animals, is to pay close enough attention." The X-ray process took nearly an hour, with Dr. Miller carefully positioning the portable unit to capture multiple angles of Rusty's injured leg. The horse remained remarkably cooperative, as if sensing that this discomfort was necessary for his recovery. Finally, "Doctor, Miller clipped the developed images to a small portable light board she'd brought in from her truck. The family gathered around as she pointed out the key features. "Here's the fracture," she indicated, tracing a jagged line across the bone. "Compare it to the X-rays from last week." She held up another film for comparison. There's actually some minor callus formation beginning, which we couldn't see clearly before." "What does that mean?" Emma asked, studying the ghostly images with intense concentration. "It means the bone has started the healing process," Dr. Miller explained. "It's very preliminary, but it's there." "Honestly, I'm surprised, given his overall condition and refusal to bear any weight." "Because of the splinter," Emma stated with absolute certainty. Dr. Miller nodded thoughtfully. "It seems likely that the constant pain from the splinter was masking any progress and preventing him from attempting recovery behaviors like shifting his weight or eating properly." She studied the images again, her brow furrowed in concentration. The barn fell silent as everyone awaited her verdict. Emma held her breath, her hand unconsciously clutching her mother's. "All right," Dr. Miller said finally, turning to face them. "Here's what I think we should do. I think we should give Rusty another chance," Dr. Miller announced, her professional demeanor softening slightly. "And the splinter's removal seems to have made a significant difference, and these new X-rays show the beginning stages of healing that I honestly didn't expect to see." Emma's knees nearly buckled with relief. "Really? You mean it?" "I do," Dr. Miller nodded. "But I want to be very clear about something. Emma, Rusty's recovery is still far from certain. He has a long, difficult road ahead, and there's a real possibility that he may never return to his previous level of soundness." "But he can live," Emma pressed, focusing on the most important point. "Yes, I believe he deserves that chance now," Dr. Miller confirmed. "His improved appetite and alertness suggest he hasn't given up, and neither should we." John placed a steadying hand on Emma's shoulder, his own relief evident. "What's the plan, Doc?" Dr. Miller began repacking her equipment as she outlined her thoughts. "First, I'm going to apply a new, more supportive bandage and add a better splint to immobilize the fracture. We'll continue with the pain medication and anti-inflammatories, but I'll adjust the dosages now that the additional pain source has been removed." She glanced at Rusty, who was watching the proceedings with newfound interest. "The most important thing is getting him back on a consistent feeding schedule to regain the weight he's lost. And we need to start some very gentle physical therapy to prevent muscle atrophy without putting stress on the fracture." "We can do that," Lisa affirmed, looking at her husband for confirmation. Mark nodded firmly. His earlier skepticism completely vanished. "I'll come out daily for the first week to monitor his progress, Dr. Miller continued. "After that, we'll reassess based on how he's responding." Emma moved closer to Rusty's stall, placing her small hand through the slats to touch his nose. "Did you hear that, boy? You're going to get better. I knew you could do it." Rusty responded with a soft nicker, nudging gently against her palm. The simple gesture brought tears to Lisa's eyes as she watched her daughter with the horse that meant so much to her. "No, Dide, there's something I need to say," Dr. Miller added, her tone becoming more personal than professional. "Emma, what you did, noticing that splinter when all of us adults missed it, was remarkable. Your attention and persistence likely saved Rusty's life." Emma's cheeks flushed pink at the praise. "I just knew something wasn't right. He wasn't acting like himself." That kind of observational skill and intuition is exactly what makes a good veterinarian, Dr. Miller commented with a smile. "Something to think about for your future, perhaps." The next few hours passed in a flurry of activity. Dr. Miller applied the new bandaging and splint, while John, Mark, and Lisa followed her instructions to prepare a specialized feed mixture designed to help Rusty regain his strength without overwhelming his digestive system after days of barely eating. Emma remained by Rusty's side throughout, talking to him in soothing tones and offering encouragement each time he showed signs of discomfort during the treatment. By mid-afternoon, Rusty had been repositioned with fresh bedding, his leg properly supported, and a carefully measured portion of feed within easy reach. Dr. Miller packed the last of her supplies, satisfied with the day's progress. "I'll be back first thing tomorrow," she promised, handing Mark a detailed care sheet. "Call me immediately if anything changes, day or night." The next 72 hours will be critical. After the veterinarian departed, the Thompson family gathered in the barn aisle, the emotional and physical exhaustion of the past day finally catching up with them. "I still can't quite believe it," Lisa said, shaking her head in wonder. "Yesterday we were preparing to say goodbye, and now we're preparing for recovery," John finished, his weathered face showing every one of his 67 years after the sleepless night. Yet his eyes were bright with renewed hope. Mark checked his watch, frowning slightly. "I hate to bring this up, but I have that meeting in Pittsburgh tomorrow that I can't reschedule. The Henderson project." Lisa nodded understandingly. "Oh, you should go. Emma and I can stay a few more days to help with Rusty's care." "Really?" Emma perked up, her fatigue momentarily forgotten. "We can stay, Mom. I won't miss school." "We'll talk to your teacher about sending assignments," Lisa replied. "This is a special circumstance." Emma threw her arms around her mother's waist. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." John chuckled at his granddaughter's enthusiasm. "Well, I for one could use about 12 hours of sleep, but first I think we should all get some proper food. I'm making my famous spaghetti for dinner. No arguments." As the adults headed toward the farmhouse to prepare the meal, Emma lingered behind. "I'll be there in a minute," she called after them. "I just want to make sure Rusty's comfortable." Alone with her horse, Emma sank down onto a bale of hay positioned just outside his stall. "We did it, Rusty," she whispered. "You're going to be okay." The horse gazed at her with his large, expressive eyes, seeming to understand every word. He lowered his head toward her, his movement still cautious but with noticeable improvement from the previous day. "I made you a promise, and I kept it," Emma continued, reaching through the slats to stroke his nose. "And now, I'm making you another one. I'm going to be here every step of the way until you're better. We're in this together, okay?" Rusty's soft nicker was all the response she needed. The recovery process began in earnest the following day. True to her word, Dr. Miller arrived early to check Rusty's vital signs and adjust his medication. To everyone's relief, the horse had maintained his improved appetite overnight, consuming most of the specialized feed mixture and drinking plenty of water. "These are all positive signs," Dr. Miller confirmed as she checked the bandaging. "The real test will be getting him to stand within the next few days. The longer he remains down, the more complications we risk." Emma, who had insisted on being present for every examination, nodded solemnly. "What can I do to help him?" "Talk to him, keep him calm, encourage him to eat," Dr. Miller suggested, "and help with the passive range of motion exercises I'm going to show you and your grandfather. They'll be crucial for preventing muscle atrophy." Throughout that day, Emma hardly left Rusty's side, diligently following Dr. Miller's instructions. She gently moved his uninjured legs through the prescribed motions, talked to him constantly about everything from school projects to her favorite books, and celebrated each small victory. When he finished his feed, when he showed interest in his surroundings, when he responded to his name. By evening, Emma had established a routine, complete with a chart hung outside Rusty's stall, where she meticulously recorded his food intake, medication times, and any changes in behavior or condition. "You're quite the nurse," John remarked, as he watched his granddaughter measuring out the evening feed portion with scientific precision. Emma smiled, though fatigue was evident on her young face. "Doctor, Miller said we have to be super consistent with his care. I don't want to mess anything up." "You're doing a wonderful job," Lisa assured her, entering the barn with a tray of sandwiches. "But you need to take care of yourself too. You've barely eaten all day." "I'm not hungry," Emma protested, though her stomach betrayed her with an audible growl. "Rusty needs you strong and healthy," John pointed out wisely. "Can't help him if you're falling over from hunger, now can you?" Reluctantly acknowledging the logic, Emma accepted a sandwich and sat on her now customary hay bale to eat, her eyes never leaving Rusty as she chewed mechanically. 1 week into Rusty's recovery, the atmosphere at the Thompson farm had transformed from crisis to cautious routine. Emma had missed 5 days of school, but her teacher, Mrs. Calloway, had been understanding, sending assignments with Lisa's friend, who taught at the same elementary school. Emma dutifully completed her work each evening, but her days belonged entirely to Rusty. Dr. Miller had reduced her visits to every other day, impressed by the meticulous care the horse was receiving. His vital signs continued to improve, she noted during her Thursday morning examination. The new X-rays showed promising callus formation around the fracture site. "So he's definitely healing?" Emma asked, hovering nearby with the detailed logbook she'd created, ready to record every observation. "Yes, but now we face our biggest challenge," Dr. Miller replied, her expression serious. "It's time to get him standing." John, who had been mucking out the adjacent stall, paused his work. "Is that safe for the fracture?" "It's necessary," Dr. Miller explained. "A horse's body isn't designed to lie down for extended periods. We risk pressure sores, muscle atrophy, and potential lung congestion if he doesn't get up soon. Plus, the controlled weight-bearing will actually stimulate bone healing, as counterintuitive as that might seem." Emma's face paled slightly. "But what if he hurts himself trying to get up? What if he falls?" "That's why we're going to do this very carefully," Dr. Miller assured her. "We'll use a sling system to help support his weight and prevent any sudden movements that could damage the healing bone." The process of setting up the specialized lift took most of the morning. Mark, who had returned from Pittsburgh the previous evening, worked alongside John to secure heavy-duty straps to the barn's support beams while following Dr. Miller's instructions precisely. "The system will take most of his weight," the veterinarian explained to Emma, who watched the preparations with visible anxiety. "But he'll still need to make an effort. That's where you come in." "Me?" Emma's eyes widened. "Rusty trusts you more than anyone," Dr. Miller said. "He'll need encouragement. This will be scary and uncomfortable for him, and he might resist. Your voice will help keep him calm." By early afternoon, everything was in place. The specialized sling had been carefully positioned under Rusty's body, with padded supports strategically placed to distribute his weight without putting pressure on the injured leg. "All right," Dr. Miller announced, wiping her brow. "We're ready to begin." "Everyone understand their roles?" Mark and John nodded, taking their positions at the manual pulley system that would gradually lift the straps. Lisa stood ready with additional padding and supplies, while Emma positioned herself where Rusty could easily see and hear her. "Talk to him, Emma," Dr. Miller instructed as she administered a mild sedative to keep Rusty calm but alert. "Let him know what's happening and that he's safe." Emma swallowed hard, suddenly feeling the weight of responsibility. "Hey, Rusty," she began, her voice initially shaky but growing stronger. "We're going to help you stand up today. It might feel weird with all these straps, but they're going to support you so you don't hurt your leg." You've been doing so great this week, eating all your special food and being so brave with your exercises." As she spoke, Dr. Miller nodded to Mark and John, who began the delicate process of taking up the slack in the support system. The straps gradually tightened around Rusty's barrel chest and abdomen. "You're doing great, boy," Emma continued, maintaining a steady stream of encouragement, "just a little bit at a time." "No hurry." Rusty's ears flicked nervously as he felt the unfamiliar pressure of the sling. He snorted, his eyes widening with alarm. "Easy now," Emma soothed, moving closer. "It's okay. I'm right here." For several tense minutes, the process continued, with the sling taking more of Rusty's weight while still allowing him to rest on his side. When Dr. Miller judged the support adequate, she gave the signal for the next phase. "But now we need to encourage him to make the effort to roll into a sternal position up on his chest as the first step to standing," she explained quietly to Emma. "Show him that apple you've been saving." Emma produced the fresh apple she'd been keeping in her pocket, holding it where Rusty could see and smell it. "Look what I've got, Rusty, your favorite." "But you need to try to roll up a bit to get it." Rusty's nostrils flared at the scent, his interest evident despite his discomfort. With a grunt of effort, he shifted slightly, using the support of the sling to roll partially onto his chest. "Good boy," Emma exclaimed, her face lighting up. "That's it." "Perfect," Dr. Miller murmured, carefully monitoring the process. "Let's give him a moment there before we continue." The next phase, getting Rusty from a sternal position to actually standing, proved more challenging. Despite the support of the sling, the horse seemed reluctant or unable to coordinate his legs properly after so many days of immobility. "It's not working," Emma whispered anxiously after several failed attempts. "He's getting tired." Dr. Miller checked her watch, concern etched on her face. "We can't keep him in the sling too long or we risk circulation issues. He needs to make the effort now or we'll have to try again tomorrow." "But tomorrow will be harder, won't it?" Emma asked perceptively. "He'll be more tired and sore from today." "Yes," Dr. Miller admitted. "This is our best chance." Emma took a deep breath, then moved closer to Rusty's head, placing her hand gently on his cheek. "Rusty," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that only the horse could hear. "I know you're scared. I know it hurts. But you have to try. Remember when you first let me ride you? I was so scared, but you took care of me. Now it's my turn to take care of you, but I need your help." Whether it was the familiar touch, the beloved voice, or some deeper understanding between girl and horse, something shifted in Rusty's demeanor. With a tremendous effort that left him trembling, he pushed with his front legs while the sling supported his hindquarters. Slowly, awkwardly, he rose to a standing position. "He's up!" John exclaimed, carefully maintaining tension on the support ropes. "Don't let go," Dr. Miller cautioned. "The sling needs to stay in place to support him." Emma could hardly contain her joy as she watched Rusty standing for the first time in over 3 weeks. His injured leg barely touched the ground, instinctively held slightly aloft, but his other 3 legs trembled with the effort of supporting his weight after so long. "You did it, Rusty," she praised, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "You're standing." For nearly 15 minutes, Rusty remained in the supported standing position while Dr. Miller carefully checked his vital signs and adjusted the sling to ensure his comfort. Emma stayed by his head the entire time, offering apple slices and constant encouragement. "That's enough for his first session," Dr. Miller finally announced. "Let's lower him back down very gradually." The process of returning Rusty to a recumbent position was executed with the same careful precision, and by late afternoon, the exhausted horse was resting comfortably once more, the sling removed but left in place for the next day's session. "That was remarkable progress," Dr. Miller told the family as they gathered outside the stall. Many horses resist the sling completely or panic during the process. Rusty showed exceptional trust and determination. "Will he have to go through that every day now?" Lisa asked, concern evident in her voice as she watched her daughter slump with exhaustion against the stall door. "For the next week, yes," Dr. Miller confirmed. Twice daily sessions, gradually increasing the time he spends standing. Then we'll begin transitioning to having him stand with minimal sling support and eventually on his own." Emma straightened, fatigue forgotten in the face of this new challenge. "We'll do whatever it takes," she declared, her young face set with determination that mirrored Rusty's own. That evening, after a celebratory dinner where even John's usually stoic demeanor had given way to outright optimism, Emma sat beside Rusty's stall for their nightly routine. Reading aloud from Black Beauty, she had just reached a particularly dramatic chapter when she noticed Rusty's breathing had changed. Immediately alert, she set the book aside and moved closer. "Rusty, are you okay, boy?" The horse's respiration seemed more labored than it had been all week, and a slight tremor ran through his body. Alarmed, Emma placed her hand on his neck, finding it hot to the touch and slick with sweat despite the cool evening. "Mom!" she called out, panic rising in her throat. "Grandpa, something's wrong with Rusty!" The Thompson family rushed to the barn, John arriving first with Lisa and Mark close behind. Emma's face was pale with fear as she pointed to Rusty's trembling form. "He was fine a few minutes ago," she explained frantically. "Then his breathing changed, and he started sweating, and he feels really hot." John immediately checked the horse's gums, a technique Dr. Miller had taught him for assessing equine health. "They're dark," he reported grimly, "and his pulse is racing." Mark was already dialing Dr. Miller's emergency number. "We need to get her here now," he said, stepping outside for better reception. Lisa knelt beside her daughter, her arm around Emma's shoulders. "What happened before you noticed the change? Did he eat anything different? Did he move in a way that might have hurt his leg?" Emma shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "We were just reading like we always do." "He seemed tired, but I thought that was normal after standing in the sling today." Outside, they could hear Mark's voice growing more urgent. "Yes, it's an emergency. Yes, all of those symptoms. How soon can you get here?" John dampened a clean cloth in the water bucket and began gently sponging Rusty's neck and shoulders, trying to cool him down. "Easy, boy," he murmured. "A help's coming." Emma watched Rusty's labored breathing with mounting horror. After everything they'd been through, discovering the splinter, the week of intensive care, today's triumph with the sling, the thought that they might lose him now was unbearable. "Please don't leave me, Rusty," she whispered, pressing her face against his neck. "Please keep fighting." Mark returned, his expression tense. "Dr. Miller's on her way." "She thinks it might be an infection or a reaction to the stress of standing today." "What can we do until she gets here?" Lisa asked. "Keep cooling him down," Mark replied, rolling up his sleeves to help John, "and monitor his breathing and heart rate." Emma's mind raced, replaying everything Dr. Miller had taught them about Rusty's care. "The chart!" she exclaimed suddenly, grabbing the logbook she'd been keeping. "Maybe there's something in here that will help Dr. Miller figure out what's wrong." She flipped frantically through the pages, scanning her careful notes from the past week. His temperature was normal this morning during Dr. Miller's check. He ate all his breakfast and most of his lunch. His medication hasn't changed since Tuesday. A thought struck her. Wait, did anyone give him his evening antibiotics after the sling session? It was supposed to be at 5:30. The adults exchanged alarmed glances. "I thought your mum did it," John said. "I thought Mark was handling the evening medications," Lisa replied, looking at her husband. "I was disassembling the sling equipment," Mark admitted. "I assumed one of you had taken care of it." Emma checked her chart again. He's never missed a dose before. Could that cause this? Before anyone could answer, headlights swept across the barn as Dr. Miller's truck pulled into the yard. Seconds later, the veterinarian hurried in, medical bag in hand, her face etched with concern. "Tell me exactly what's happening," she instructed, moving directly to Rusty's side and beginning her examination. As Emma and the others related the symptoms and their realization about the missed medication, Dr. Miller's expression grew increasingly grave. Rusty's been on a powerful antibiotic to prevent infection in the fracture site, she explained as she quickly prepared an injection. Missing a dose could allow opportunistic bacteria to multiply rapidly, especially after the stress and exertion of today's standing session. "Is it my fault?" Emma asked, her voice small and frightened. "I should have checked the chart more carefully. No one person is responsible for this," Dr. Miller replied firmly, administering the injection with practiced efficiency. "Caring for an injured horse is a team effort, and sometimes things slip through the cracks, especially after an exhausting day like today." She continued her examination, checking Rusty's injured leg with particular attention. "Though there's increased heat and swelling around the fracture site," she noted, "we're likely dealing with the beginning of an infection in the bone itself, osteomyelitis." "Can you treat it?" Mark asked, his arm wrapped protectively around Emma's shoulders. Dr. Miller nodded, though her expression remained serious. "Yes, but we need to act aggressively. I'm giving him a stronger antibiotic now, and we'll need to adjust his ongoing treatment plan." She glanced at Emma, clearly weighing how much detail to share with the child. "Emma, this is a setback, but it doesn't mean all is lost. Rusty's improved condition from the past week gives him a better chance of fighting this infection than he would have had before." Emma wiped away tears with the back of her hand. What do we need to do?" "First, we'll cool him down to help manage the fever," Dr. Miller explained, handing Emma a clean cloth. "Then we'll need to maintain round-the-clock monitoring for the next 48 hours. His medication schedule will be more frequent, and we'll need to check his temperature every 2 hours." John nodded resolutely. "We can set up a rotation. No one person has to handle it all." "I want to stay with him," Emma insisted. "I won't sleep anyway." "You need rest too," Lisa countered gently. "We'll take shifts, including you, but everyone needs some sleep." For the next 2 hours, they worked under Dr. Miller's guidance. The fever-reducing medication gradually took effect, and Rusty's breathing became less labored. Dr. Miller cleaned the area around the fracture site, applying a special antibiotic-infused bandage directly against the skin before rewrapping the leg. "The next 24 to 48 hours will be critical," she told them as she packed up her supplies around midnight. "If the infection gets established in the bone, it could jeopardize all the healing that's taken place." "And if that happens?" Lisa asked quietly when Emma had stepped outside briefly with her father to fetch more clean water. Dr. Miller's expression was solemn. "But then we may find ourselves back where we started, having to make difficult decisions about Rusty's quality of life. Chronic osteomyelitis is extremely difficult to treat in horses." When Emma returned, Dr. Miller had composed her features into a more optimistic expression. "I'll be back first thing in the morning to check on him. Call me immediately if his fever spikes again or if he shows signs of increased pain." After the veterinarian left, the family established their monitoring schedule. John would take the first shift until 2 a.m., followed by Mark until 6 a.m. Lisa would cover from 6 to 10 a.m. when Dr. Miller was expected to return. "What about me?" Emma protested. "I want a shift too." "You have the most important job," Mark told her. "Getting some sleep now, so you can be fully alert tomorrow when Rusty needs you most. The first few hours of medication should help him rest comfortably. but tomorrow might be rougher. Though she wanted to argue, Emma could feel exhaustion pulling at her limbs and clouding her thoughts. The emotional roller coaster of the day, from the triumph of getting Rusty to stand to the terror of finding him feverish and trembling, had drained her completely. "Promise you'll wake me if anything changes," she asked her father. "The second anything changes," Mark assured her. "Now go get some rest, Emmy." In the farmhouse, Emma went through the motions of preparing for bed, but sleep seemed impossible despite her exhaustion. Her mind kept replaying the day's events, searching for signs she might have missed, ways she could have prevented Rusty's setback. Lisa found her sitting on the edge of her bed, still fully dressed, staring blankly at the wall. "Oh, sweetheart," she sighed, sitting beside her daughter. "This isn't your fault." "I'm supposed to be taking care of him," Emma whispered, her voice catching. "I promised him I wouldn't let anything bad happen." Lisa pulled Emma into a gentle embrace. "You know what Dr. Miller would say about that promise? She'd say it's one no veterinarian or caretaker can ever truly keep. We do our absolute best, but animals get sick or injured in ways we can't always prevent." "But the missed medication was a mistake the whole family made," Lisa interrupted firmly. "We got caught up in the excitement of Rusty standing and lost track of the routine." "It happens, Emma. What matters now is how we respond and move forward." Emma leaned against her mother, too tired to argue further. "What if he doesn't get better this time?" Lisa stroked her daughter's hair, choosing her words carefully. "Then we'll face that together, with the same courage you've shown all along. But Rusty has you on his side, and that's given him an advantage from the very beginning. Don't give up on him yet." Finally, succumbing to exhaustion, Emma fell into a troubled sleep. Her dreams were filled with running horses, splintered fences, and Rusty's dark, trusting eyes looking to her for help she couldn't provide. She woke with a start just before dawn, momentarily disoriented. The bedside clock read 5:47 a.m. Throwing back the covers, Emma dressed quickly and rushed downstairs, determined to check on Rusty before her father's shift ended. The early morning air was cool against her face as she crossed the yard to the barn. Inside, she found Mark sitting on a hay bale outside Rusty's stall, meticulously recording temperature and medication details in her chart. "Dad? How is he?" she asked anxiously. Mark looked up, his tired face breaking into a smile that eased Emma's worst fears. "Better, Emmy. His fever broke about an hour ago, and he's been resting more comfortably since then." Emma peered into the stall. Rusty lay on his side, his breathing deep and regular. When he heard her voice, his ear flicked in her direction, and his eye opened to regard her with what seemed like recognition. "He knows you're here," Mark observed. "That's a good sign." Emma slipped into the stall, kneeling beside Rusty's head. "Hey, boy," she whispered, "you scared me last night." Rusty nickered softly, the sound weak but unmistakable. "He's still not out of danger," Mark cautioned, joining Emma in the stall. "Dr. Miller will need to assess how well the antibiotics are working when she gets here." Emma nodded, but a fragile hope had rekindled in her chest. Rusty was still fighting, still responding to her presence. Somehow, she knew that meant everything. Dr. Miller arrived precisely at 10 a.m. as promised, her face registering pleasant surprise when she saw Rusty's improved condition. "His temperature is nearly normal," she confirmed after a thorough examination. "And the swelling around the fracture site has decreased significantly." "The aggressive antibiotic treatment seems to be working, so he's going to be okay?" Emma asked, hardly daring to hope. Dr. Miller smiled, though her professional caution remained. "We're not completely out of the woods yet. Bone infections can be persistent, and we'll need to continue the intensive antibiotic regimen for at least 2 weeks. But yes, I believe we've caught it early enough to prevent a major setback." The relief in the barn was palpable. John clapped Mark on the shoulder, while Lisa pulled Emma into a quick hug. "What about the standing sessions?" John asked. "Should we postpone those until the infection is fully cleared?" Dr. Miller considered this. "I think we should hold off for 2 days to let the antibiotics do their work. Then we'll resume, but with shorter sessions initially. We don't want to lose the progress he's made, but we also need to be mindful of not overstressing his system." Over the next 2 weeks, the Thompson family settled into a new rhythm of care. Mark returned to Pittsburgh, but drove back to the farm every weekend. Lisa arranged to work remotely, setting up her laptop in John's dining room where she could coordinate her marketing projects while remaining available for Rusty's care. Emma gradually returned to school, attending 3 days a week while completing additional assignments at home. The standing sessions resumed as Dr. Miller had recommended, and with each passing day, Rusty showed incremental improvement. The infection cleared, the fracture continued to heal, and the horse began bearing minimal weight on his injured leg during the supported standing periods. By the 1-month mark since Emma's discovery of the splinter, Rusty had progressed to standing with only minimal sling support for up to an hour twice daily. His weight had improved, his coat regained some of its former shine, and his eyes held the alert, interested expression that had been his hallmark before the accident. "I think we're ready for the next big step," Dr. Miller announced during her now weekly visit. "It's time to try having him stand without the sling." The prospect was both exciting and terrifying. Without the sling's support, Rusty would need to balance fully on his healing leg, risking a fall if it couldn't hold his weight. "Will it hurt him?" Emma asked anxiously. "He'll be uncomfortable," Dr. Miller acknowledged. "But we've reached the point where further healing requires natural weight-bearing. His X-rays show excellent callus formation, and the bone is ready for this challenge." They chose a Sunday morning for the attempt, when Mark was present and the whole family could assist. The sling was positioned as usual, but this time, once Rusty was standing, they would gradually release the tension until he was supporting himself entirely. "Talk to him, Emma," Dr. Miller instructed as they prepared. "He'll be nervous, and your voice helps keep him calm." Emma positioned herself at Rusty's head, stroking his cheek and murmuring encouragement as the adults carefully managed the sling system. "You can do this, boy," she whispered. "You're so strong and brave. I believe in you." Inch by inch, the tension on the sling was reduced. Rusty's muscles trembled with effort as more of his weight transferred to his legs. When the critical moment came to put weight on the injured limb, he hesitated, holding the leg slightly aloft. "He's scared," Emma realized. "He remembers how much it hurt before." Acting on instinct, she moved to Rusty's injured side and placed her small hand gently on his shoulder. "I know you're scared," she told him. "But sometimes we have to do scary things to get better. Remember how scared I was to jump that little log on the trail last summer? You took care of me then. We're in this together, remember?" Whether it was her touch, her words, or simply the horse's own remarkable resilience, Rusty slowly lowered his injured leg until the hoof rested lightly on the ground. Gradually, he shifted more weight onto it, testing its strength. The barn held its collective breath as Rusty stood completely unassisted for the first time in over a month. "He's doing it," John whispered, his weathered face breaking into a grin. Dr. Miller nodded, professional reserve giving way to genuine emotion. "Remarkable," she murmured. For 5 minutes, then 10, then 15, Rusty maintained his stance, occasionally shifting his weight but keeping all 4 hooves firmly planted. Emma remained by his side, providing a constant stream of praise and encouragement. When Dr. Miller finally signaled that it was enough for the first session, there wasn't a dry eye in the barn. That, she declared, is what we call a miracle in veterinary medicine. Not a miracle, Emma corrected with quiet certainty. Just love and not giving up. The weeks that followed brought steady progress. Rusty graduated from standing sessions to gentle walking in the small paddock, his gait uneven but improving daily. By the time summer vacation arrived, Emma was able to lead him in slow circles around the barnyard, his injured leg still bearing less weight than the others, but growing stronger with each passing day. "Will he ever be normal again?" Emma asked Dr. Miller during what had become her monthly checkup visit. The veterinarian considered her answer carefully. Rusty will always have some limitation from this injury. The fracture was severe, and there's likely permanent damage to some of the supporting structures in his leg. Seeing Emma's face fall, she added quickly, "But that doesn't mean he can't have a wonderful life. He may not be able to jump or carry a rider for long distances, but light riding on flat terrain should eventually be possible. And he'll always be the same Rusty inside, the one who connected with you so deeply that you noticed what all the rest of us missed." One warm August evening, as fireflies began to illuminate the dusk around the farm, John found Emma sitting on the paddock fence, watching Rusty graze peacefully. "Penny for your thoughts, Pumpkin," he said, climbing up to sit beside her. Emma smiled, her eyes never leaving the chestnut horse, who now moved with only a slight hitch in his gait. "I was just thinking about how sometimes the most important things are the ones you have to look really hard to see." John nodded thoughtfully. "Like a splinter hidden in a bandage." "Like that," Emma agreed. "But also like how Rusty never gave up, even when he was hurting so bad. And how everyone worked together to help him heal. You most of all," John reminded her. "Your persistence saved him, Emma. Never forget that." They sat in companionable silence, watching as Rusty raised his head to gaze at them, then ambled over to the fence, his movement still careful but confident. "Dr. Miller says I might be able to start riding him again next spring," Emma said, reaching out to stroke his velvety nose. "Just walking at first, but still riding. That'll be something to look forward to," John agreed. "Grandpa," Emma's voice took on a more serious tone, "I know what I want to be when I grow up." "Let me guess," John chuckled. "A veterinarian." Emma nodded solemnly. "Dr. Miller says I have good instincts and observation skills. She said I could shadow her next summer if it's okay with Mom and Dad." "I think that's a fine idea," John replied. "You'd make a wonderful vet." 5 years later, 15-year-old Emma Thompson led a gleaming chestnut gelding into the show ring at the county fair. Rusty, now 12 years old, moved with a barely perceptible unevenness in his gait, the only remaining evidence of his near-fatal injury. They weren't competing in the jumping classes or the speed events. Instead, they had entered the exceptional bond category, a special class that showcased the relationship between horse and rider rather than athletic ability. From the stands, Lisa and Mark watched with pride as their daughter guided Rusty through a series of maneuvers that demonstrated their remarkable connection. No verbal commands were needed. The slightest shift in Emma's weight or the gentlest touch of her hand was enough to communicate her wishes to the horse who had become her closest companion. John Thompson, now 72 but still straight-backed and strong, stood at the rail, his eyes misty as he recalled the frightened 7-year-old who had refused to give up on her beloved horse when everyone else had lost hope. In the center of the ring, Emma and Rusty came to a halt, facing the judges. The horse's coat gleamed in the sunlight, his once dull eyes now bright with life and intelligence. The slight asymmetry in his movement had become simply part of who he was, a badge of honor rather than a disability. As they awaited the judge's decision, Emma leaned forward to whisper in Rusty's ear, her yellow competition sweater, the same shade as her childhood favorite, bright against his chestnut coat. "No matter what happens," she told him, "we've already won the most important prize." Rusty nickered softly in response, the same gentle greeting he had given her on that pivotal night 7 years earlier, when a determined little girl had refused to accept what the adults believed was inevitable and discovered the splinter that changed everything. In that moment, surrounded by the bustle and noise of the county fair, horse and girl shared a bubble of perfect understanding, a bond forged through crisis, strengthened by recovery, and transformed into something that would shape both their lives forever. The blue ribbon they received minutes later was just a bonus. That evening, as the fair wound down and the summer stars appeared above the Thompson farm, Emma led Rusty to his favorite grazing spot in the south pasture. Removing his halter, she watched as he lowered his head to the sweet grass, content and at peace. "You know," she told him, settling cross-legged nearby, "Doctor, Miller says I have a good chance at veterinary school if I keep my grades up." Rusty flicked an ear in her direction, listening as he always did. "And it's all because of you," Emma continued, reaching out to stroke his foreleg where the fracture had once threatened his life. "Because you taught me that sometimes healing takes more than medicine. Sometimes it takes someone who sees what others don't, who believes when others have given up." As if understanding every word, Rusty raised his head and gazed at her with the same trusting eyes that had looked to her for help on that critical night years ago. Then, with the deliberate movement that had become his signature gait, he stepped forward and gently rested his head against her shoulder, a gesture of affection and trust that spoke more eloquently than words ever could. In that peaceful moment, under a canopy of stars, the injured horse who was once about to be put down and the young girl who had saved him remained what they had always been to each other. Not just companions, but teachers, healers, and proof that sometimes the most profound truths are discovered by those willing to look beyond the obvious. Sometimes they're discovered by a 7-year-old girl who simply refuses to say goodbye to her best friend.